The rope bit deeper into her neck each time the gaunt Doberman jerked forward. Mud clamped around her legs. Her claws scraped stone, shrill as chalk dragged across a board. Breath came in ragged bursts, no longer a bark, only air tearing through her chest. Across Blue Ridge Creek, two boys stood on a rock ledge. Cole lifted his phone high, while Ryan, pants soaked to the knees, clutched a trembling puppy by the scruff. Their laughter cracked the air, brittle, cheap. Ryan swung his arm and released. A faint splash. The water swallowed the tiny shape whole. The Doberman didn't bark. A low, broken growl tore from her throat, deep as earth splitting open. Her bloodshot eyes locked on the current, as if sheer will could drag it back. Up on State Road 23, a man froze mid-step. Ethan Walker's coffee cup slipped, shattering against the gravel. He didn't think. He was already running down the bank. "Hey!" His voice ricocheted off the stone walls. "Stop!" Cole flinched, nearly dropping his phone. Ryan still had one pup in his hand, raised like a ball about to be thrown. "Put it down!" Ethan snapped, breath tight but voice sharp as steel. Ryan hesitated. The pup pressed into his chest, shivering without pause. At the bank, the Doberman lunged with everything left in her. Her front paws lifted clean off the ground, rope tearing flesh, blood darkening the collar line. "Now," Ethan said, voice low, heavy as a command. Ryan crouched, shaking, and set the pup in the mud. Ethan surged forward, scooping it up. Against his chest, the tiny heart thrashed like a fish caught in netting. "Crazy," Cole muttered, mimicking an adult tone. Ethan didn't look at him. His eyes flicked to the wooden post anchoring the rope. "Untie it." No one moved. Shifting the pup to his left arm, Ethan pulled at the knot himself. His house key dug into the cord, jaw clenched hard. The Doberman lunged again, nearly strangling herself. "Hold on, girl," he muttered, eyes fixed on the knot. A sharp snap. The rope dropped to the mud like a dead snake. The Doberman bolted, but not at the boys. She shot toward the water. Ethan twisted, body slamming across her path. "No!" "Don't." The creek ran brown and fast, where two ripples had already vanished. Ethan laid the pup down, spread his palm along its side, pressed firm. Once, twice, 3 times. A cough, weak, but real. The small chest heaved back to life. Ethan didn't stop. He waded straight in, cold water biting his skin. His hands swept the bottom, roots tangled like hooks. Then, contact. A limp body. He hauled it to shore, pressed its chest, and waited for the sound. Nothing. He pulled off his t-shirt, draped it over the still frame, shielding what he couldn't save. Silence fell heavily over the bank. Cole lowered his phone, hands slack. Ryan stared at the wet fabric, lips parted, but no sound. Ethan dialed 911. His words came clipped. "Animal cruelty. Blue Ridge Creek, State Road 23. 2 teenagers, 1 dead, 2 alive, mother injured. Need animal control and police." He gave his name and ended the call. The Doberman nosed the surviving pup, trembling so hard her teeth clattered, yet her eyes stayed locked on Ethan, then back to the current. That gaze carried more than pain. It pointed, sharp and unseen, toward the bend further down. Sirens wailed, cutting the distance into pieces. Ethan cradled the pup tighter, feeling its breath fall in sync with his own heartbeat. He looked to the creek. The Doberman looked too, not where her pup had vanished, but where the water narrowed under the shadow of trees. She lifted one paw, set it down, lifted again. A signal. Faint, but certain. Ethan understood. This wasn't the end of the story on the riverbank. It was only the beginning. Sirens split the night air, red lights sweeping across the wet grass. Ethan held the puppy tight against his chest, its breathing syncing with his heartbeat. Beside him, the Doberman shook uncontrollably, neck raw and bleeding, yet her eyes never left the current. She was free, but her gaze was still chained to loss. A patrol door slammed open. Deputy Mark Hayes stepped out, hand instinctively hovering near his holster. His eyes scanned the scene, the rope lying in the mud, a soaked t-shirt covering a lifeless body, 2 boys silent on the bank, a barefoot man in the creek, and a battered mother dog with blood streaked around her neck. His shoulders squared. His voice was clipped. "You the caller?" Ethan nodded. 2 alive. 1 gone. Tied to that post, Mark keyed his radio, calm but firm. "Dispatch, report. 2 survivors, 1 deceased, mother injured. Request animal control, priority." He didn't raise his voice. The scene was heavy enough on its own. A white van rolled in, the faded logo of County Animal Services barely visible on its dented door. A Hispanic woman in a blue polo climbed out, nameplate reading Delgado. Sarah Delgado didn't rush forward. She crouched low, extending an empty hand. "Hey, Mama," she said softly, voice steady as a lullaby. "You did well." A soft slip lead looped forward, not forced, just offered. The Doberman hesitated, then let it slide over her head. No struggle, no pull. She stood tall, body taut, eyes still locked on the water. Meanwhile, Mark separated Cole and Ryan, demanding their names. The older one, Cole, stammered, "It was just a joke." His voice cracked. The phone in his hand was seized, sealed as evidence. Ryan kept his head down, lips trembling. Every letter Mark wrote hit the page like falling stones. Ethan sat on the grass, pressing steady fingers along the pup's ribs. Its breaths came smoother now, each one a thread of hope. But his eyes strayed to the soaked shirt beside him, where another body had gone still. A knife twisted inside his chest. He didn't cry. He clenched his jaw. Silence carried more weight than the flood. Sarah's gaze narrowed. She noticed the Doberman's pattern. Step forward, stop, turn back, then push on toward the bend downstream. Again and again, like a compass needle fixed to one true point. She muttered, "You see that?" Ethan nodded. "She's leading." Deputy Mark waited, instinct sharp. He knew mother dogs carried truths, words couldn't. "We'll follow the creek. Public side only. No trespassing." He looked at Ethan. "Stay within sight." Ethan nodded. He wasn't a lawyer, wasn't an expert, just a pair of hands and a refusal to look away. They moved. Weeds whipped at their legs, water trickling under roots. The Doberman guided them, not rushing but certain. Every so often she glanced back, checking they followed. At the bend, she froze. A rusted fence sagged into the earth, frayed rope dangling from the wire. Mark crouched, lifted it, face tightening. It was the same kind they'd cut from her neck. Sarah raised her camera, shutters clicking. "Evidence?" she whispered. To the left, thick brush. To the right, a makeshift lean-to of wood and blue tarp beside a weather-worn trailer. A dented bowl lay abandoned in shadow. Another coil of rope hung from a nail. The air was thick with garbage, bleach, and something darker still. The Doberman strained forward, nose fixed on the lean-to's hollow. A faint whimper seeped out. Sarah lifted a hand. "Keep the lead loose." No pressure, Ethan crouched low, peering beneath the fence. In the shadows, eyes flickered like coins catching light. A rusted cage. Inside, tiny bodies curled tight. From the trailer, a man appeared. Cap brim low, belly pushing against his shirt. His voice came rough. "You folks lost?" Deputy Mark stood tall, unflinching. We had a report upstream. This fence borders the creek. You keep dogs here? What keeps my business? You got a warrant? The man's tone hardened. Not yet. And we haven't stepped past the fence. Mark answered, steady, deliberate. The Doberman lowered her chest to the wire, pressing flat, a low growl vibrating through her. Ethan saw it clearly. It wasn't panic. It was a declaration. There was something beyond that mesh, and the darkness hadn't ended at the river's bend. Evening light filtered through the canopy, striping the creek with threads of shadow and gold. The Doberman pressed against the rusted fence, her gaunt frame drawn taut. Eyes dark as burning coal drilled into the hollow of the lean-to. Ethan dropped to one knee again, following her gaze. Through a narrow gap, faint glints stared back, tiny eyes, trembling. Not one, more than one. Sarah Delgado lifted her camera, shutters clicking in rhythm. Deputy Mark Hayes stood rigid, hand resting lightly on his radio. He knew it. This wasn't just boys tossing puppies into water. This ran deeper, older, dirtier. The Doberman stepped forward, leash stretched tight. But she didn't panic. She froze, released a low rasp as if demanding they look closer. Ethan saw the dried mud crusting her chest, scored with scars, fresh and faded. This wasn't the first time she'd been bound. Her history was written in flesh. You see it? Sarah whispered. Ethan nodded. She knows there are more inside. Mark lifted his radio. Unit 12. Possible illegal kennels at Blue Ridge Creek. Request backup and search warrant prep. His tone was steady, stripped of waste. While they waited for a response, a sound cut through the stillness. Something small darted through the weeds near the bank. Ethan lunged, blocking its path. A pup, exhausted, matted with mud, eyes cloudy from terror. It had squeezed through a gap in the fence. Ethan scooped it up, its weight terrifyingly light. Sarah wrapped it quickly in cloth, trapping what little warmth remained. The Doberman growled low, not at the humans, but at the shadows inside the pen. The message was plain. There are more. Don't leave them. The air thickened. Across the creek, Cole and Ryan sat mute, their bravado dissolved. The reckless thrill was gone, leaving two pale faces staring at a truth too large to shrug off. Another sound. Hinges shrieked. The trailer door groaned open. The man in the cap stepped out, eyes sliding everywhere but at theirs. Ethan caught a detail. The rope on his wall, frayed, identical to the one that had cut into the mother's throat. Mark didn't cross the fence. His words came measured, carved. We'll be back with papers. And when we do, everything here will be recorded. The man said nothing. He simply pulled the door shut, leaving the stench of damp and the echo of metal grinding. Sarah pulled Ethan aside, voice low. We can't risk it. If we push in now, the evidence won't hold. Her eyes flicked toward the Doberman. Needs us to do this right. Ethan tightened his hold on the pup. Helplessness clawed at him, but the Doberman met his eyes, steady, unwavering, not pleading, trusting, demanding. You have to go on. For a moment, a memory surfaced, his father's voice, teaching him as a boy that justice rarely arrived with fists. It came with patience, with proof. Ethan nodded, whispering back, We're not walking away. Mark's radio crackled. The judge had signed off. A warrant was in motion. Now, they waited. Seconds dragged heavy, each one a stone laid across their backs. The Doberman eased back, lowering herself by the fence. From the shadows, 3 tiny cries leaked out. She bowed her head, exhaling like a verdict carried too long. Ethan lowered himself beside her. He didn't touch. He simply matched her presence. Quietly, for her alone, he said, "You're not alone." The canopy rustled overhead. Distant sirens grew closer, stitching space shut. The group understood. This wasn't yet the rescue. This was the door to it. And if they were to win, they would have to take each step exactly right. The Doberman's gaze cut back into the shadows, unblinking. No movement, no sound, but clear as a map drawn in silence. Ethan knew then. Turning away was no longer an option. Engines rumbled up the dirt road. A second cruiser rolled in, dust billowing like gray smoke. Deputy Mark straightened as a colleague handed him a packet. "We've got the warrant," he said. No emphasis, no need. The words carried weight enough. The man in the cap, Frank Lawson, leaned against the trailer door. When he saw the papers, his mouth twitched. Not a smile. More like the clock had started running backward. "If you've got a warrant, then go on in," he muttered, feigning calm. But his eyes kept scanning, measuring escape routes. Sarah Delgado took the lead, slow steps, one hand raised where the Doberman could see. "Come on, Mama," she murmured. The dog moved forward, frail yet proud, like an arrow cutting the way. Ethan followed closely, heart pounding hard. He had never seen eyes so weary and yet so bright. They entered the lean-to. The stench hit instantly. Mildew, bleach, rot. Ethan swallowed hard against the taste. Sarah raised her camera, frame by frame. Rusted bowls, frayed rope, brown stains across warped floorboards. Mark spoke aloud, his voice even, mechanical, each word a nail driven into record. Rusted cages, unsanitary housing, contaminated water source, possible illegal veterinary drugs. Ethan bent toward the first cage, empty. The walls clawed ragged, like a history etched by paws never freed. The next cage, two smaller dogs, skin peeling in patches, eyes raw and red. They recoiled from the light. Sarah crouched low, her voice warm and thin. "Come on out, sweetheart." A soft loop slid forward, no force, just invitation. Two trembling bodies staggered out, legs weak, eyes blinking rapidly. In the far corner, three more huddled, fur matted into clumps. The Doberman charged ahead, stopping at the cage door. She didn't claw, she didn't howl. She only stood, leaning aside to make space. Sarah snapped the latch. As the door swung, the mother pressed her nose to each small head, sniffing, counting, confirming life by heartbeat. Then she turned to Ethan, blinked once, slowly. Not thanks, recognition. They're still here. Frank Lawson edged back, voice defensive. "They ain't mine." They just showed up. Mark didn't look at him, his pen scratched. No shelter. Untreated wounds, evidence of abuse. Each word fell like a sentence already written. Another figure appeared from behind the trailer, thin, hollow-eyed, hands shaking. We fed them sometimes," he stammered. Mark's glance was sharp. "Name?" "Dale. My brother," came the reply, words dropping like stones into still water. Sarah didn't lift her head. Her pen kept moving. Camera shutters kept ticking. Ethan crouched, his hand resting lightly against the Doberman's back. He avoided the torn neck, letting his palm absorb her warmth instead. In that moment, the truth was undeniable. Language wasn't needed. The animal herself was the witness, the evidence no excuse could smother. Mark signaled the second animal control team. Clean transport crates, lined with blankets, were carried in. Puppies shivered but settled as the doors closed behind them. Each latch clicked like a promise sealed. Ethan glanced at the Doberman. This time, she didn't pull the lead. She followed, slow, steady, as if trusting at last that this leash wasn't prison. It was a path to light. Frank Lawson folded his arms, lip curling. You don't get it. These dogs aren't worth anything. They're trash. His words dropped heavily. Ethan spun, eyes blazing, but Mark's hand blocked him. Evidence will answer. Not fists. Ethan swallowed his rage, but inside, the fire for justice burned hotter. When the final crate was carried out, Sarah took a marker and wrote quickly on the intake board, Raven. The name hung in the air like a rebirth. Ethan stared at it, knowing a chapter had turned, but this was no ending. Only the first time darkness had been forced to retreat before light. The air in the yard thickened, heavy as tar under the noon sun. When the second animal control truck rolled in, dust spiraled like smoke. No one thought this was a small case anymore. This was a full operation. Sarah Delgado led her techs down the lean-to. Each cage opened with steady hands. Soft leads offered like circles of release. The camera shutters snapped without pause, recording every streak of rust, every smear of dried blood. Mark called out details, his voice hammer-steady. Non-compliant housing, signs of abuse, possible illegal veterinary substances. Ethan stood beside Raven, the name now written on the intake board. She didn't claw or fight. She simply walked at his side, eyes locked on each pup as it was carried out. Every time a cage opened, she tilted her head, nose sweeping in close, checking, confirming. A mother letting nothing slip past her notice. One by one, the trembling pups were lifted and placed into clean crates lined with blankets. And with each transfer, the air shifted. Whimpers gave way to rough but stronger breaths. Ethan watched them pass and felt something inside himself loosen, as if his own body had been released from an invisible cord. Frank Lawson lingered at the edge of the yard, hands jammed in pockets, lips pressed pale. "They ain't worth a dime," he muttered. "You're wasting your time." Sarah didn't answer him. She spoke only to her team. "Careful. Record everything. Every detail is a life." Ethan caught sight of Cole and Ryan standing on the grass beyond, their eyes wide, their bravado stripped. Cole whispered, voice shaking, barely audible. Will it survive?" It wasn't clear if he meant Raven or the pups. Ethan didn't reply. He only looked at Raven. That was enough of an answer. The boy dropped his head, as if grasping for the first time the weight of a breath. In the shadows, a plastic tub lay overturned. Sarah opened it. The sharp sting of bleach rushed out. Inside, plastic bags filled with worn collars, many scuffed smooth, names erased. She pulled a frayed pink strap. Raven growled low, eyes bloodshot, locking on the collar, then shifting to Ethan. He turned away, jaw tight. That ragged pink had once belonged to a life lost to the water. Mark logged it, voice grave. Evidence. Multiple collars, tags filed down. Note, suspected link to trafficking network. He turned to Lawson. "You'll answer to this in court." Lawson shrugged, but his eyes had nowhere left to hide. When the last dogs were carried out, Raven finally stepped toward the truck. She paused at the crate door, looking back one last time. Her gaze swept everything. The creek, the rusted cages, the ropes, the wet shirt draped over what no longer breathed. Then she stepped inside. Silent, but regal. A mother shouldering memory to save what remained. Ethan stood behind, fists tight. He wasn't a lawyer, wasn't trained, staff, but he knew this. He was now a witness. More than that, he was part of a vow, that this time no eyes would be turned away. As the crate door closed, Sarah looked at him. "You've started. Now comes patience. The process will carry through." Ethan nodded, voice raw. "I won't walk away." The truck rolled off, leaving the yard stripped bare. The darkness hadn't vanished, but it had been cut open, and through the stench of bleach, rust, and defeat, something new slipped in, fragile, but alive. Hope. Fluorescent lights washed every corner of the county shelter. The air carried a strange mix: disinfectant, freshly laundered cloth, and the dry scent of kibble. Raven lay in a wide kennel lined with cotton towels. Around her, the 4 surviving pups curled together, whimpering now and then, before sinking into steady breaths. Ethan sat outside, back against the gray brick wall. Sarah Delgado handed him a pale blue volunteer badge. "All you need to do is sit. Don't try anything. Let her choose you." Ethan nodded, slipped the badge into his pocket, and stayed silent. He only listened. The sound of Raven's breathing, the faint click of tiny claws on the floor as the pups stirred. Raven's eyes were still dark, but not frantic. They watched, measured. When Ethan remained still long enough, she edged closer, her back brushing against his leg. No growl, no pull on the lead, just a light touch, like permission to stand inside her circle. In the days that followed, the rhythm of the shelter became their new cadence. Raven's neck wounds were cleaned and medicated. The pups nursed in turns, supplemented with warm bottles. Ethan never left after his shifts. He mopped floors, washed dishes, folded blankets, but his truest work was sitting quietly, becoming the constant Raven could lean into. Cole and Ryan, under preliminary sentencing, began their community service at the shelter. Silent, they pushed carts, scrubbed trays, watched the dogs with different eyes. No laughter now, no phones raised. One afternoon, Ryan paused outside Raven's kennel. His voice cracked in a whisper. "I'm sorry." He didn't look at anyone, just let the words fall like pebbles into a pond. Raven didn't answer, but her ear flicked. Ethan saw it, and he knew. Scars on the body don't fade easily, but scars on the soul have to begin somewhere. Outside, the community stirred. Neighbors brought bags of food, blankets, even rolls of coins in old film canisters. An elderly woman told a story of the dog she once loved, tears pooling as she watched Raven curl around her pups. "Don't let them go through this again," she murmured, her wrinkled hand resting on Ethan's. He nodded. He made no promises, only let his silence carry the vow. Dr. Singh, the veterinarian, checked each pup with patience. The smallest wheezed, lungs tight, needing a nebulizer and antibiotics. He offered no guarantees, only said, "We'll try, one day at a time." Sarah added quietly, "Here, hope is a habit." Not a miracle. At night, when the shelter closed, Ethan stayed by Raven's kennel. She rested her head against his leg, eyes sliding shut in a fragile peace. His hand moved along her back, careful to avoid the scarred neck. The warmth beneath his palm told him healing wasn't built on grand words. It was born in small moments, when a life once chained believed it was safe beside a human again. In the hush, Ethan remembered the creek, the rush of water, the frantic heartbeat in his hands. Now the scene was different. No jeering laughter, no rope, only steady breaths and heartbeats finding rhythm again. He closed his eyes, letting the change sink through his bones. No one in this room was whole. Raven carried scars. Her pups bore loss. Ethan carried memories that cut deep. 2 boys carried guilt heavy enough for a lifetime. Yet under the cold white lights, piece by piece, the fractures were knitting. And that was the true miracle, not erasing, but continuing together. On the day of court, the sky was impossibly clear. Frank Lawson stood at the witness stand, His face creased, his defense weak and thin against the weight of evidence piled high. Sarah Delgado presented photo after photo, rusted cages, dried blood, shredded collars. Mark read his report aloud, voice clipped, relentless. Each detail revealed more than a single crime. It exposed a system of neglect that had been allowed to fester for far too long. Cole and Ryan, the boys who were once standing on the cliff, were brought in as witnesses. Their voices trembled, but the truth still came out. They admitted what they had done, admitted the terror of watching a small life vanish beneath the current. The court didn't treat them as criminals. Instead, they were sentenced to community rehabilitation, tied directly to the animal shelter. For the first time, they looked at Raven without turning away. Raven wasn't in court. She was at the shelter, lying in sunlight that spilled through a window, her pups curled tight against her ribs. But her image, red-rimmed eyes, gaunt frame, unbroken spirit, was carried inside every person present. Her silence had forced an entire town to speak. Ethan stood in the hallway, listening as the gavel struck. Frank Lawson was found guilty of cruelty and unlawful confinement, facing years behind bars and heavy fines. But for Ethan, justice wasn't the sentence. Justice was knowing no creature would ever again be chained in that filthy yard. A week later, at Adoption Day, the shelter rang with laughter. Families walked the aisles, meeting eyes that once held despair, now lit with a flicker of hope. A little girl bent low, whispering to a trembling brown pup, "Let's go home." A boy grinned as a wet nose brushed his palm. Ethan knelt in front of Raven. She stood, her frame fuller, coat shining under the lights. Her pups tumbled around, tugging at his laces. Sarah stepped forward with a clipboard. "You're sure?" she asked. Ethan met Raven's gaze. He didn't need words. He signed. As the pen touched paper, Raven stepped forward and pressed her head into his chest. No distance. No doubt. Just a choice. Made by both. That evening, the golden light of sunset washed the road. Raven walked at his side, her pups safe in the truck bed. Her ears stood tall, her eyes calm. Ethan opened the door, leaned close. "Let's go home," he whispered. Raven leapt inside without hesitation. The story didn't end with a sentence. It didn't end with a single home. It spread wider, a lesson for the whole community. Cruelty is not destiny, and silence is not an option. Every person, every small act, a phone call, an open hand, a refusal to look away, can change a fate. Ethan knew Raven's scar would never vanish, but he also knew it no longer marked captivity. It marked survival, and with every step beside him, Raven would teach what she herself had lived. Love needs no language, only to be seen, to be trusted, and to be returned. As the sun sank, painting the road in amber, Ethan drove out of town. In the rear view, Raven lay across the back seat, her pups curled against her, eyes closed in peace. Outside, the world could still be cruel. But inside that small cabin of the truck, one truth was certain. They had found each other, and they would never be abandoned again. You've just witnessed the tear-stained journey of Raven, the frail Doberman once chained, once forced to watch her pups thrown into a river. But who, in the end, found home and true love. If this story moved your heart, please share it so more people understand that no life, no matter how small, no matter without a voice, deserves to be abandoned or abused. Tell us, have you ever rescued a dog, a cat, or any living creature? How did that moment change you? Leave your story in the comments below, because we believe your voices can inspire the world. And don't forget to hit subscribe to join us in the journeys ahead. Stories of compassion, of faith, of lives waiting for a saving hand. Thank you for listening, for crying with us, and for choosing not to turn away. We'll see you in the next story.